Xcorps Sweet Rides is brought to you by
SoCal Paintworks, San Diego's #1 restoration shop. Rotoring F-Body. Make your F-Body handle the way it should. Kiesler Transmissions, shipping your classic into the future. Greg Scott Race Engines, filling your need for speed.
So we're here at Schneider Cams that have been around for quite a while. Jerry, what's the history of Schneider? How did it get started?
Well, back in the early 50s, we started as a Crower Schneider. We were partners with them for 4 or 5 years, and then we broke up, and then we separated. We've been at Schneider Cams since about 1959 or 1960.
So Jerry, what made Bruce and Dave want to get into making cams?
Well, actually, Bruce was into what they called a Crower UFAB manifold, which is a manifold that you could have 6 or 8 carburetors put together. And Dave was doing some of the offie stuff, and he couldn't get camshafts for their Indy cars. So he decided that if he couldn't get what he wanted, he'd have to figure it out and make them. He was an engineer by trade. And so he made a cam grinder. Back then you couldn't buy a cam grinder, you had to make your own. So he made a cam grinder and he started grinding all the cams for their Indy project. And at one time, if you didn't have a Schneider cam in your Indy car, you might as well not show up at the racetrack, because his cams for the offies were without a doubt the best out there.
So him being an engineer really put him a step above the rest of the guys who were making cams at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, because he graduated from Cal Poly up there, and because he knew what he was doing, it just put us way ahead of the game.
So Jerry, in the early days of drag racing, there really wasn't much of a cam selection, was there?
No, not at all. It was pretty slim. That's why we had the 1/4 and the 1/2 and the 3/4 race cams. That was about your choice. And there wasn't, you didn't get as much of a selection as far as durations and lift. You just took what was on the shelf. Today there's hundreds of different profiles that do the same thing.
So what was the difference in the 1/4 and the 3/4 and stuff like that for the cam?
Well, a 1/4 race was just like a step over stock, and then you had your 1/2 race that gave you that lumpy idle that everybody wanted back then, and then your 3/4 and full race were just strictly for race cars, and they weren't all that big.
So we're talking with Jerry down at Schneider Racing Cams about some of the old days drag racing and how the birth of cams came around in the early days. Now, when you guys ground a new cam, what'd you do for testing?
Well, actually, we would find a race car or a car to put it in, and then we would actually take it to the track, and that's where we did our testing. It wasn't, people didn't have the dynos and stuff that we have today where we can do it on site. So we had to actually go to like Lions Drag Strip or Riverside Raceway or Paradise Hills if people were around then.
So in the early days of drag racing, or even just cars in general in the 50s and stuff, there really wasn't too much of a choice. I mean, you had a carbureted engine and that was it. But once you start moving up into the 70s, the 80s and stuff, where stuff starts getting a little bit more computerized and more technical, you start running into more cam choices of what you're going to choose. And how'd that affect you guys?
Well, quite a bit, because it got way more technical. So we no longer could just kind of pick a cam from, we know this one will work, so let's stick it in there. But it got to a point where we had to ask a lot of questions. Things had to be designed more to each car and the type of racing they were doing.
So Jerry, what kind of feedback do you get from some of the people out there?
Actually, we get quite a bit. I get emails from people and I get calls. I've had a call the other day that a guy said that he put our cam in the latter part of last season, and to that point he was lucky if he was finishing 4th, 5th, 6th, and he actually won the last 4 races of the season. So he was really happy, and he ordered another cam for the next year. So that's the kind of response we get. And, actually get quite a bit of it.
So it just goes to show you that the cam is the heart of the engine, and it's really important that you pick the right one for your engine and the kind of races you're doing. So stick around. We got more Xcorps Sweet Rides coming up.